Hey, thanks so much for finding the video. Do us a favor. If you haven't done so yet, please subscribe. And be sure to leave your comment. We love to interact. Enjoy the video. Let's start with the report over the weekend from Ian Rappaport and others about Jameis Winston being in the driver's seat, his word, to be, or his phrase, to be the starting quarterback for the New Orleans Saints in 2021. Are you buying it?
Well, I think he has a really good chance, and I think everything Sean Payton said publicly when he did his Super Bowl media appearances last week is everything I've heard privately. I mean, Sean Payton doesn't really play poker when he when he talks to the media. I mean, it was the same thing last year when he was talking up Taysom Hill. We saw they signed Taysom Hill to a big contract. If anything, they probably think he's a horrible negotiator because he tells it like it is. But I think that probably also does have something to do with recruiting a little bit. Jameis Winston's going to be a free agent, and Sean Payton doesn't want to pretend like he's maybe, maybe not. He's serious about giving him a shot. Now, they obviously, we know how they feel about Taysom Hill, and the only reason why maybe you'd give Winston a little better chance than Hill is I think he has more upside. If Winston looks like he taps into something, I think you can see, more potential with him. But he's a little bit more of an unknown at the same time. So I think that would be a summer competition between the two. And look, the Saints will look into every avenue. They'll make a call about a Deshaun Watson trade. They'll have discussions about Sam Darnold and Carson Wentz, and internally they'll talk about, well, who do we love in the draft and how much would it cost to move up. But considering the money they have at their disposal and the fact that the Texans wouldn't even take their call with the 28th pick in the draft for Deshaun Watson, they just wouldn't have the ammo to get him. I think Jameis and Taysom is what we're going to see.
What, real quick, has Taysom Hill's, in the minds of the organization, has his star dimmed a little bit after his stint as the starter?
I have not heard that directly. The one thing I noted in my mind is, Sean Payton really went to bat for him, really stood up for him after each of the first three starts. And after the fourth start, he kind of acknowledged some of the things he was disappointed that he was still doing wrong, with holding on to the ball a little too long and the ball security. I think those are things that can be coached and schemed better. I cannot believe their game plan with Taysom Hill was not look for your first two reads, otherwise take off running, or even look for your first read, otherwise take off running, because his legs are such a weapon. But I think he'll get better at anticipation the more snaps he gets to play, and I think they'll get better at figuring out what he does well and what he doesn't do well. But all along, it was Taysom's turn in line. He had waited a long time. Peyton had promised him that opportunity. He got that opportunity. But that's out the window now. Now it's an open competition between Winston and Taysom Hill, and it'd be whoever they think gives them, A, the best chance to win, but B, who has the brighter future. And I think that might be where Winston would have the leg up is the long-term potential.
Mike Triplett's our guest. Mike, what do you think Jameis Winston's going to cost?
My guess, and I really don't know, but look, I was talking to somebody about this the other day who said, look at all the teams who need a quarterback. And I'm like, all right, let's go through them. Chicago. Last year, they could have had Jameis Winston for cheap. They paid a fortune for Nick Foles instead. New England could have had Jameis Winston for free and didn't sign anybody until Cam Newton a month later. There was one more, but somebody else that
Colts.
The Colts. They signed Phillip Rivers for $25 million. Didn't kick the tires on. Washington was one we talked about that they weren't in the market for a quarterback last year. They're in the market for a quarterback now. Maybe Ron Rivera loves him, but I just don't see. To me, to take him away from New Orleans, you have to say, we are giving you our starting job and we're paying you, $12 million a year and we're guaranteeing it. I don't know who that team would be. I don't think another team that's saying, yeah, we're going to let you compete with someone here. Maybe we'll give you $8 million like the Raiders gave Marcus Mariota. I don't think that pries him away. My guess is a deal that was actually similar to the one that Teddy Bridgewater signed with the Jets that the Saints inherited after they traded for him. I believe it was $5 million But if he started X amount of games and threw for X amount of yards, it went all the way up to $15 million. I would not be surprised to see a deal that is structured something like that.
I'm really interested because my assumption, Mike, is he would have gotten a deal somewhere like what Teddy Bridgewater got in Carolina. Did Teddy's 5 games as a starter in New Orleans, was that really worth $30 million?
Well, Teddy's 5 games. Well, I mean, Teddy's deal was what, 21 and a half, 23, somewhere in that range. But look, Carolina could have had Winston too, and Carolina knows Winston very well. They played against him for 5 years. They wanted to pay Teddy Bridgewater $23 million, and they weren't interested in Jameis Winston when he was available. He was an unsigned free agent last year. So I don't, for better or for worse, the NFL kind of turned its nose down on Jameis Winston, and he was coming off that season with all the turnovers. But it's kind of funny. I mean, like, I think somebody's going to pay Teddy Bridgewater money for Carson Wentz. I think somebody's going to trade a second-round draft pick for Carson Wentz and then pay him $25 million a year. I'm not convinced that's more of a sure thing than Jameis Winston is, but it's sort of like the league has spoken. I would not have been shocked if somebody would have paid Jameis Winston $20 million last year, but nobody did. Nobody came close to it.
A couple more minutes with Mike Triplett. He's on Twitter at Mike Triplett. I'll give him a follow, ESPN.com. Read his stuff there. We also saw over the weekend, Mike, I know you reported it, that the Saints have restructured Drew Brees' deal. Can you just explain? Because anytime we go deep dive into numbers, right? Like a lot of our listeners, no doubt, are just confused and don't understand what that all means. Can you just kind of break it down elementary what happened with Brees' contract?
Well, here's what's funny about that is we talk about a restructured contract all the time. And it usually means the Saints took somebody's salary and turned it into a signing bonus. It's just a salary cap measure. It doesn't mean a thing. This time, Drew Brees took a $24 million pay cut. He changed his salary from $25 million to $1 million. So that screams Drew Brees is definitely retiring. I mean, the only other possibility is, I haven't made up my mind yet, but I know you guys have to worry about your salary cap, so I'll put my salary down to $1 million, and it'll give me all summer to think about it. I don't think that's the case. I think he has decided to retire, and that was pretty glaring proof. But what it means is there's a sort of not a loophole, but the way they do the salary cap is when you have dead money left on your contract, and Drew Brees has $22 million in dead money left on his contract that will have to count against their cap. If you technically say he retires after June 1st, then you can split it up over 2 years. So it'll count $11 million against this year's cap, $11 million against next year's cap. And that's what they wanted to do. But if his salary was on the books until June 1st at $25 million, that they couldn't have afforded to do it that way. So they're saying, well, why don't we say your salary is $1 million? And he says, sure, I'm retiring anyway. I'm happy to do that for you guys. So it's a way that ultimately when he does retire, he is going to count $11 million against their cap this year, $11 million against their cap next year. It was a big number that people were worried about for a long time, and that's actually pretty palatable in the end.
Mike Triplett's with us. We've talked so much about quarterback, and that's obviously the question everybody has.
That's the story of the Saints. For 15 years, we didn't have to worry about it. Now they're like all those other teams. That's the obsession. That's all we're going to talk about every time I'm on your show from now until September and probably December.
Well, that and Mad Libs, which we will do, especially in the offseason. We'll have you back and we'll just play Mad Libs or something like that. But, Mike, I mean, we also saw Super Bowl 56 odds are out, and the Saints have the 8th best odds. I mean, Vegas is saying your roster is still really good. Now you got to figure out quarterback. But where else on this roster, where else are the spots where internally the Saints know we've got to address that in free agency or in the draft?
Right. Well, if they did not have any salary cap issues, there's not a lot of glaring holes. They could run back the same roster as last year, and it's not bad. I mean, it's maybe one of the best in the league outside of quarterback. But they do have salary cap issues, so they're going to have to make major decisions about which guys they're keeping. Marcus Williams is a free agent. If you lose him, you badly need a free safety. Trey Hendrickson is a free agent. If you lose him, you probably need another defensive end. Who else am I thinking about? Sheldon Rankins, maybe not desperate at defensive tackle if you don't re-sign him. But then the next year, Marshawn Lattimore, Ryan Ramczyk, Teron Armstead, all going into the final year of their contracts. If you're not planning to extend all of those guys beyond this year, you've got to replace them now. That becomes a top draft priority. So I think it really depends on which guy, and obviously they have to get younger at receiver. Michael Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders can come back, but Emmanuel Sanders might have one more year left here. Malcolm Jenkins might have one more year left here. So it all really just, they have to decide who are we investing in long term, and if we're not re-signing these free agents over the next couple of years, then that position becomes a huge priority.
Mike, I got two more things, and we could do them quickly. One, I got to get your thoughts on the Saints violating NFL protocols and the possibility of more discipline. We know they've already lost one draft pick. What is this additional discipline going to amount to?
Well, actually, we don't know that they've already lost a draft pick. Adam Schefter did report that. The Saints, from what I've been told by sources, have still not been levied any discipline. And once they do hear of what their discipline is going to be, they're prepared to, fight it and challenge it and point out, especially from the incident in midseason when they were seen in the post-game locker room without masks, that you can find cases of 10 other teams doing that as well.
Right.
Why are we being singled out? So that remains to be determined just how severe their penalties are going to be and if they'll be able to appeal it and lessen those penalties. But obviously, the reporting is all accurate that the NFL has tagged and targeted them. And in this case, it was accurate that while they were doing their normal review of video to see who else Alvin Kamara was in contact with, they spotted somebody who wasn't supposed to be in the locker room. And, that is an offense that I'm sure there will be some discipline for.
So the Saints, as we know, will go into the draft with the picks they have, likely to get a few compensatory picks as well for the Teddy Bridgewater and Terry Fontenot defections, I guess we could say. What else last thing for this offseason, what else for New Orleans is right there at the top of their to-do list between now and obviously the start of free agency?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's all who can you afford to keep. I mean, they could theoretically re-sign every free agent that we talked about. They could extend Lattimore. They could extend Ramczyk. They could theoretically choose to do all that. They don't have to trade Michael Thomas. They don't have to trade Marshawn Lattimore. But all of those things are on the table. Letting a free agent go, I tend to think maybe they let Trey Hendrickson go. He might have priced himself out of where they had him pictured. I think Marcus Williams is actually really important to this team. But every decision is about, how are we going to get under the cap and who are we going to commit to? Because, the salary cap, I mean, maybe people don't follow it that closely. It's going to be about $20-25 million less than they planned for because of the lost revenues last year. And that is some extreme belt tightening coming up.
He is Mike Triplett. Make sure you're following him on Twitter at Mike Triplett. And, of course, read his stuff at ESPN.com. Always good enough to give us a couple of minutes. Mike, we appreciate you as always, man. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.